Imagine you're playing a video game, a really, really good one. The characters inside it have no idea they're made of code. They think their world is real. They feel pain, fall in love, wonder about the nature of the universe, and somewhere outside their world, you're holding a controller. Now flip it around. What if someone is holding a controller right now, and you are the character? This sounds like science fiction. It's not. It's a serious philosophical and scientific question that some of the world's top physicists, philosophers, and technologists believe deserves a straight-faced answer. And the deeper you dig into it, the stranger things get. So, are we living in a simulation? Let's find out. In 2003, philosopher Nick Bostrom published a paper that didn't exactly scream Tuesday afternoon reading, but its conclusion has been rattling around in science circles ever since. Bostrom's argument is elegant and kind of uncomfortable. He said, one of three things must be true. Either almost every advanced civilization destroys itself before it develops the computing power to simulate minds, which, let's be honest, isn't the most comforting option. Or advanced civilizations reach that level of power, but for some reason never run detailed simulations of people. Maybe they think it's unethical. Maybe it gets boring. Maybe they're too busy. Or, and here's the third door, we are almost certainly living in a simulation right now. Here's why that third option is so hard to dismiss. Think about computing power for a second. Right now, on your phone, you can run a simulation of a chess grandmaster, a fluid dynamics model, or an entire medieval village economy. In 100 years or 1,000, what might be possible? What if a civilization with 1 billion years of technological development decided to simulate the entire history of a planet, populated with conscious minds? If even one civilization in the history of the universe ran such a simulation, the number of simulated minds would vastly outnumber real ones. And if simulated minds vastly outnumber real ones, then statistically, almost certainly, you are one of them. The math isn't the weird part. The math is actually pretty clean. The weird part is what it might mean. Here's where it gets interesting. If you were designing a universe from scratch and you wanted to save computing power, you wouldn't render everything all the time. You'd only process the parts that something or someone was observing. You'd calculate the rest only needed. You'd set a maximum resolution, a kind of pixel limit for reality. Now here's a strange thing about our universe. It has exactly that. It's called the Planck length. About 0.000000000000000000016 meters. Below that scale, our physics simply breaks down. Space itself stops making sense. It's as if you've zoomed into a photograph and hit the pixel limit. The image becomes noise. Coincidence? Probably, but you can see why some physicists find it worth thinking about. There's more. In quantum mechanics, particles don't have definite properties until you measure them. An electron isn't spinning up or spinning down. It's in a kind of fuzzy superposition of both until the moment someone looks. Then, snap, it picks a state. It's almost as if the universe is waiting to be observed before it decides what to do. Again, almost certainly just physics. But if you were a programmer optimizing a universe simulation, don't compute what no one is observing would be a perfectly reasonable design choice. And then there's the speed of light. Why is there a universal speed limit at all? In our universe, nothing travels faster than about 300,000 kilometers per second. Why that number? Why any limit? In a simulation, there might be a very simple answer. It's the maximum processing speed of the hardware running the thing. None of this is proof, not even close, but it's the kind of thing that makes you pause mid-breakfast and stare at your orange juice for a little too long. Let's zoom out for a moment. Imagine for a moment that you're a scientist in a simulated universe, which, if any of this is true, you actually are. How would you ever know? You can't look behind the curtain if the curtain is woven into every photon that reaches your eyes.
Some physicists have suggested that if the universe is simulated, we might find statistical artifacts, tiny, subtle glitches in how space is structured at the smallest scales. We haven't found it, but we also might not have the instruments sensitive enough yet. In reality, there's a deeper problem with the simulation hypothesis. It might be unfalsifiable. If the simulation is good enough, no experiment you could run inside it would ever betray its nature. It's a bit like asking, how would you prove from inside a dream that you're dreaming? Sometimes you can. The clocks behave strangely, you can't read properly, your math falls apart. But in a perfect dream, you couldn't. Here's a question that philosophy professors love to drop on unsuspecting students. If you were in a perfect simulation and you could never tell the difference, would it change anything? Your relationships would still be real, your choices would still matter, your love for someone, your grief when something is lost, the satisfaction of building something with your hands, none of that becomes fake just because the substrate is different. After all, your thoughts right now are just neurons firing. The meaning isn't in the material, it's in the experience. It's in the pattern, not the medium. But here's the thing that genuinely does matter. If we are in a simulation, then by definition, someone created it. Something or someone exists outside our universe, and that outside layer is, in the most literal sense imaginable, a kind of God. Not necessarily a personal God, not necessarily a benevolent one, but something that built the rules we live inside. It also means our universe could be turned off. Cheerful thought. Now, let's be fair. Most physicists who've thought carefully about this are skeptical. Physicist Sabine Hosenfelder argues that the simulation hypothesis is about as meaningful as any other unfalsifiable metaphysics. It tells us nothing we can test, and therefore does very little useful scientific work. There's also a computational problem. Simulating a universe isn't like simulating a chess game. It's not even like simulating a weather system. To accurately simulate a universe with quantum mechanics included, to actually compute the behavior of every particle, every interaction, every quantum state, might require a computer bigger than a universe. The physics seems to resist being fully compressed. Though here's the clever counter. A sophisticated simulation wouldn't simulate every particle. It would only simulate what's being observed at the resolution needed and interpolate the rest. Like a video game that only renders what's in your field of view. Whether a civilization a billion years ahead of us could pull that off, honestly, we have no idea. That gap in time is so vast that trying to imagine their technology is like a caveman trying to imagine a smartphone. It's not impossible, we just can't picture it. Here's the part nobody talks about enough. Right now, today, we are building simulations. Video games get more realistic every year. We have simulations of protein folding that have helped crack some of biology's hardest problems. We have climate models complex enough to make useful predictions decades into the future. We have AI models that behave in ways their designers didn't fully anticipate. Emergent behaviors arising from patterns, just like us. We are right now in the early stages of becoming exactly the kind of civilization that Bostrom's argument talks about. And if we keep going, if we survive long enough and develop the technology, then someday human civilization might run simulations detailed enough to host conscious minds. What's really happening is that we're approaching the moment where we ourselves could become the simulators. And that changes everything about how we should think about the question. Because if we are considering whether to run such a simulation, and we should carefully, then we're already thinking about the ethics of creating minds that don't know they're created. Minds like, possibly, us.
So, are we living in a simulation? Honestly, we don't know. And what's beautiful about that is how different it feels from the last time someone asked an unanswerable question about our place in the cosmos. Once, we thought the Earth was the center of everything. Then we found out it wasn't, and instead of shrinking us, it expanded us. It turns out we were part of something so much larger and stranger than we'd imagined.
that reality might have layers we can barely begin to see. And here's what really gets me. If we are in a simulation, then somewhere out there, something cared enough to build a universe that produces beings capable of asking whether they're in a simulation. That's not a small thing. That's extraordinary. We are, at minimum, the universe becoming curious about itself, and that's real no matter what substrate it's running on. This video was made possible by the strange fact that you exist. We'll see you next time.